I used to think family was the safest place in the world, the place that even if the whole world turned its back on you, you would still have somewhere to come home to. But then I grew up and realized not everyone who calls you my dear or my beloved truly loves you. This isn't some sensational story. It's the truth about what can happen inside a perfect home filled with smiles, family dinners, and sweet words that taste like poison. In today's video, I'm going to tell you everything. From being an orphan who thought she was being saved to the journey of surviving the arms of a woman I once called Aunt. And finally, how I found my freedom again and myself. Chapter 1. Aunt Rachel and the Iron Chairs. I didn't grow up in a poor family. We never lacked money or good meals or a sturdy roof over our heads. But what we were always short of was air. Not the air you breathe, but the air you need to live. Aunt Rachel had raised me since I was little. She was my mother's older sister, but after my parents died in an accident when I was only 5, she naturally became my legal guardian. I still remember vividly the first day I moved into her house. The place was too quiet. Quiet to the point where every sound felt like a mistake. A single spoon clattering onto the floor could make the whole house hold its breath. Aunt Rachel had an unspoken rule. Everything must be neat, orderly, and absolutely on time. Sounds normal, right? But to her, on time meant dinner had to start exactly at 6:00 p.m. Not a second early, not a second late. I was once punished for showing up at the table at 6:03. Not the kind of punishment you're thinking of. No yelling, no hitting. Aunt Rachel disciplined through silence. A silence so thick it felt like fog suffocating you. She would just stare at you throughout the entire meal without a single word, and you would shrink smaller and smaller until you felt invisible, until you believed you deserved to disappear. The kitchen was always spotless. The iron chairs were cold like a hospital ward. I hated sitting there in silence, listening to the sound of forks and knives against plates, listening to the chewing inside my own mouth echo in that lifeless room. I used to think maybe I'm just too sensitive, but the older I got, the more I realized it wasn't that I was sensitive, it was that the environment itself was subtly, profoundly wrong. Aunt Rachel never hit me. She never even raised her voice. But she controlled every breath, every step, every thought. With schedules, with her eyes, with the guilt she planted in me every time I dared to do something for myself. Do you know what it feels like to be raised, provided for, cared for, yet constantly feel guilty for simply daring to live? That's how I grew up. Chapter 2. Emma and the Strange. Silence. I met Emma when I was 15. I'd grown so used to living in Aunt Rachel's cold, calculated world that when I was transferred to the local public high school, I didn't expect much. My only thought was, go to class, go home. Don't cause trouble, don't draw attention. That was my survival strategy. But Emma was different. From the very first day, she sat next to me and said, hi, with a strange kind of smile. Not fake, not overly bubbly, just kind. She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. Emma didn't pry, didn't push her way into my personal space. She was just there, a steady, pleasant presence. Even when I barely spoke, she kept talking. Even when I didn't respond, she still sat beside me at lunch. At first it made me uncomfortable, not because Emma was unpleasant, but because she didn't leave. She didn't give up. That scared me. Then one day, I forgot my pencil case in class, and Emma quietly placed it on my desk with a small note. You left this. It's okay. I'm forgetful too. I remember holding that note for the rest of the evening. Not because of what it said, but because of how it felt. For the first time in years, someone had done something for me, without expecting anything in return. From then on, we talked more. At first just a few scattered sentences, then small conversations after school. Emma never pushed me to open up, but somehow I did. One day she asked, Do you ever get tired of pretending to be okay? I laughed, not because it was funny, but because for the first time someone understood me before I even said a word. Gradually, Emma became the only safe place I had. I didn't tell her about Aunt Rachel, not fully, but I told her about the silence, the looks that made my chest tighten, the dinners that felt like rituals of judgment. Emma listened. She didn't judge. She didn't offer advice like adults always did. She just sat there making me feel like I wasn't crazy. But right when I started to feel alive, Aunt Rachel began to change, not through obvious actions, but through tighter control, colder rules, smoother manipulation. And Emma, she had no idea she was about to be pulled into something far worse than any test we'd ever take at school. Chapter 3, Rules in the Dark. After a few weeks of getting close to Emma, I began to notice something strange. I felt happy. Not the movie kind of happy. No jumping for joy. No daydreamy montages. This was the quiet kind of happy that made you want to wake up a little earlier, made you want to go to school without feeling like you were about to be swallowed whole. Happy because someone looked at you like you were real, not like an object. But it's as if my life had been programmed to punish any positive feeling. Aunt Rachel started updating the rules of the house, not with yelling or hitting the way people usually imagine abuse. No, she was far more calculated than that. First came curfew. From 500 p.m., it shifted to 4:30, then to 4:00. The reason a good child shouldn't be wandering after school. Next was dinner time. If I came home even 3 minutes late, the food would vanish from the table as if it had never been there. No one said anything. No public scolding, just the food gone. And me left hungry as a silent reminder, don't defy me. One afternoon when Emma walked me to the gate, I didn't invite her in. Still, Emma smiled politely and said, "Hello, ma'am." Aunt Rachel stood there in the shadow behind the doorway, not responding, just watching. That look didn't say hello. It said, "I know exactly what you're doing." That night, I had to eat dinner standing in the kitchen. Aunt Rachel said sitting at the table is a privilege, not a right. That sentence lodged itself in my head like a tiny nail. Privilege. As if being treated like a normal human being was something I had to earn. A few days later, she demanded I hand in my phone every night at 7 p.m. to avoid getting addicted to devices. But I knew the real reason. She wanted to cut me off from the world, from Emma. I tried resisting once, just once. I said I need my phone to do homework. She looked at me, not angry, not shouting. Just said, "Then you can choose homework." Or dinner. I chose silence. Emma noticed I was texting less. She asked about it. I lied. I told her I was busy, tired, swamped with exams. She didn't believe me. She gave me the saddest look I'd ever seen. But how could I tell her the truth? How do you explain that? Your home is a prison, but without bars. Only stairs, rules, and a coldness that makes you forget who you are. Chapter 4. When the light knocked on the door, Emma didn't give up. Even though my replies to her messages grew shorter, even though I turned down her after-school walks, even though I kept lying that everything's fine, she was still there. One Friday afternoon, I walked out of the school gate, planning to head straight home like usual when Emma stopped me. Not with her hand, not with words, but with a look, steady and unshakable. "You're not okay," she said. "I know it." I looked away. "I'm just tired. I've texted you all week. Not once, not twice, 14 times. Not because I'm bored, but because I'm worried." My grip on my backpack straps tightened. My throat closed up, but not from anger. From something scarier. I wanted to hug Emma and cry, but I wasn't allowed to. Instead, I said, "My aunt's just strict. That's all." Emma didn't buy it. "What kind of strict?" she asked. And then for some reason, maybe because the sunlight was cutting through the trees just right, or because Emma's voice didn't sound like the adults who ordered me around, I told her. I told her about having to eat, standing up because I'd invited a friend to the house, about losing my phone privileges, about the times my dinner was taken away, about being ignored as if I didn't exist. I spoke without daring to meet her eyes, afraid I'd see pity or disgust. But when I glanced up, all I saw was anger. Not at me. From me. That's not strict, Emma said. That's abuse. I let out a bitter laugh. Nobody's hitting me. Emma shook her head. Getting hit isn't the only standard for abuse. Being denied food, being isolated, being threatened with silence, those are all violence. I had never thought of it that way. In my mind, abuse meant blood bruises. What I had, wasn't it just strict discipline? Emma looked at me for a long time before saying, I'm not going to force you to do anything, but if you ever need help, I'm here. And then she did something that almost made me cry right there in the schoolyard. She held my hand. Not romantically, just a warm hand touching a cold one, a silent reminder that I wasn't invisible. For the first time in months, I walked home without feeling like I was walking into hell. I was still afraid, but I also began to have hope, because for the first time someone was on my side. Chapter 5. Silence was no longer safe. The next week passed as usual, at least on the outside. I still woke up early, washed the dishes cleaned. The house did my homework in silence, nodding and obeying every request from my aunt like a machine. The only difference was, now I knew. I knew that what she was doing wasn't strict discipline. It was manipulation, control, suffocation. And the scariest part was this. Once you start seeing the truth, you can never go back to pretending you don't. One day, my aunt made me kneel and scrub the floor with my bare hands because I'd forgotten to fold a towel the exact way she liked. I stared at the cold water seeping into my knees, and I thought of Emma. I started writing everything down in a small notebook I hid inside my pillowcase. The date, the time of what happened, what she said, how I reacted. It felt like I was investigating my own life. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, only that I didn't want to go through all of this without leaving a trace. Then one afternoon, while I was copying notes in the library, Emma quietly slid a piece of paper in front of me. On it was a list, hotlines, child protection organizations, and the name of a teacher she trusted. I froze. I thought she would just listen and leave it at that. But she had actually researched, prepared for me. I shook my head. I can't tell anyone. My head. I can't. If my aunt finds out, you don't have to tell anyone right now, Emma interrupted. Just keep this so you know you're not trapped. I folded the paper and tucked it inside my notebook. It felt like holding a tiny bomb. Terrifying, but also knowing that if I ever needed it, it could blow everything open. A few days later, something shifted. My aunt grew wary. She started asking me strange, abrupt questions. Have you told anyone anything? Has anyone at school asked you something weird? Don't think you can sweet talk your way out of responsibility. I didn't answer. But she still knew. People like her, professional manipulators, can always sense when their control is being threatened. One night while I was asleep, she came into my room and sat right next to me. No lights. You think I don't know what you're plotting, she whispered. You've forgotten who you are, haven't you? You're a leech, something no one would take in. No one wants you. I squeezed my eyes shut. But this time, I didn't cry. Because I knew something too. She was afraid. Not afraid of me. Afraid of losing control. And for the first time, I didn't feel completely powerless. Chapter 6. When Emma was no longer just an observer. I don't know exactly what made Emma decide to take action. Maybe it was the way my eyes had been fixed on the ground lately. Maybe it was the time I whispered, I'm fine, when she asked if I was okay, while my arm was bruised from accidentally spilling water. Or maybe it was simply because Emma, even in silence, was never the kind of person who let someone weaker suffer alone. That morning started like any other. I sat in class trying to hide the dark mark on my arm with my sleeve pulled down. The history teacher was mid-lecture. The room quiet until the door opened. A school counselor walked in. She said something quietly to the teacher, then called my name. In that moment, my heart nearly fell out of my chest. I had no idea what was about to happen. My mind raced. This is it. My aunt knows. She's told the school. I'm finished. I followed the counselor to her office, my hands ice cold, and then I saw Emma sitting there. Her face was tight, but her eyes were steady with determination. The counselor invited me to sit down. She explained that a student had reported concerns that I might be experiencing abuse at home. They needed to ask me some questions. I looked at Emma. She didn't look away. She didn't look guilty. She was resolute. I didn't know how to react. I had never been trusted before, never had anyone stand on my side like this. And now, my friend, the only person who truly understood, was taking a risk to speak up for me. I opened my mouth, ready to say I'm fine, or you must be mistaken. But this time I couldn't lie anymore. I told them, not everything, but enough for them to start suspecting. Enough to make the counselor's eyes widen. Enough for them to open a file and begin monitoring my case. After the meeting, I went home with my stomach in knots. My aunt didn't know what had happened, but she could feel it. That night at dinner, she didn't say a word, but her eyes, they looked as if she was deciding whether I was still worth keeping. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking, if she found out, what would she do? The next morning, I discovered my notebook was gone. Chapter 7. When everything started to fall apart, I knew for certain I had left my notebook in my desk. I always hid it there, tucked between old textbooks. No one knew about it. No one was allowed to read it. It was the only place I dared to write the truth about what happened in that house. I had written everything. From the first time I was forced to kneel outside in the yard to the poisonous lines my aunt repeated at dinner, "You're alive because I'm generous. Don't forget who's feeding you." I wrote down feelings I could never say out loud to anyone, fear, humiliation, and the desperate wish to just disappear. And now, it was gone. That morning, my whole body shook. I searched everywhere, my bag, my books, even the bathroom, but it was nowhere to be found. I tried to act normal at school, but it felt like a heavy stone was pressing down on my chest, and when I got home, I knew the worst had happened. She was sitting at the table, my notebook in her hands, open, reading aloud. Last night, Aunt called me a parasite. I think if I didn't wake up tomorrow, maybe she'd be happy. She looked at me with a smile, not angry, but dripping with contempt, as if to say, "So you finally showed your hand. This is how you thank the person who took you in," she said. "You want pity. You want someone to come and drag you away." I didn't answer. I had no words left. That night, I didn't eat. She didn't force me. She just stood outside my room staring at me for a long, long time, and then without warning, I was grounded. No phone, no leaving my room, no school. No one was to know where I was. Emma kept texting. I could hear the notification buzz in the jacket hanging outside my room, but I couldn't reply. 3 days. I was locked in for 3 straight days. No light. No voices except hers. And she kept repeating one sentence, "No one's coming to save you." No one, but this time. She was wrong. On the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. It was a social worker. Chapter 8. Unmasking. I will never forget the moment the door opened. Not because I was rescued instantly, but because of the look in her eyes when she saw the social worker standing at the threshold. Not panic, not fear, but the way her expression shifted so quickly it sent a chill down my spine, like someone who had acted for so long they didn't even need to prepare their script anymore. "Oh, we didn't call social services," she said with a syrupy smile. "There must be some mistake." But the young woman standing there wasn't mistaken. Emma. It was Emma. She hadn't heard from me in almost a week. And instead of sitting still, she had gone to the principal, then called the hotline. No evidence, just instinct, just love. "Are you in the house?" the social worker called out. I had never been so terrified to say my own name, but I did it. My bedroom door opened. I stood there pale, shaking my hair, matted with sweat. Nothing about me resembled a child loved by her own aunt. And the first thing I heard after that was, "We're going to need you to leave here for a while." I was taken somewhere safe. Emma, her mother, and even Helen, my cousin, who I thought had cut ties, had already arranged everything. They hired a lawyer, they found a therapist, they gathered evidence, injuries, witness statements, and even accidental audio recordings from inside the house. But my aunt fought back. She hired her own lawyer, started producing proof that I was delusional, mentally unstable, and jealous because I wasn't raised by my biological parents. Then she played her trump card, the one that nearly broke me, a copy of my diary. The pages that had been the only place I poured out my pain were now presented in court as evidence that I was self-destructive and mentally ill. I wanted to disappear all over again. But this time, I wasn't alone. Emma took the stand as a witness. Helen recounted every memory of that sweet aunt who was in truth a master manipulator. And I stood there too, telling the whole truth, my voice shaking but clear. The court didn't issue a criminal conviction, but they also didn't allow her anywhere near me ever again. A no-contact order was granted. I was legally adopted by Helen, the person I once thought didn't care at all. Even now, I still don't understand how some people can wear a mask so perfectly, how they can say love while quietly choking the life out of you every single day. But I do know one thing: love is never control. Love doesn't make you hold your breath in fear every time you walk through the front door. I don't keep a diary anymore. I'm telling this story here so no one has to endure what I endured in silence. And if you are quietly enduring something like this, please know this silence doesn't keep you safe, but the truth can save you. If you've ever been through something like this, being controlled, manipulated, and forced into silence, I just want to tell you this: you are not wrong, you are not weak, and you are not crazy. Sometimes all it takes is one person believing you for you to stand up. For me, that person was Emma, and I hope you find your own Emma or become that person for yourself. Thank you for listening until the end. This is True Reddit Reads, where the truth is told in the voices of those who have stayed silent for far too long.